Good morning, my name's David Ridgway and this is Kirklees Local TV's weekly wind-up. We want to hear from you. We need your feedback. We are told that our viewability is rising each week, but we do need to have your input as to how well or how badly we're actually doing. This week we've had some really important planning decisions made in the Colne Valley. And I thought it would be interesting to bring on some special guests who have an interest in the planning process. My special guests this week are Mr. Richard Brown. Richard is the owner and proprietor of Spectrum Yarns Limited, which operates out of Spar Mill in Slathwaite. The mill is currently working to capacity, and Richard's operation brings a significant level of prosperity to Slathwaite. Paul Ward is Professor of Modern British History at the University of Huddersfield, and I have no doubt that he'll be making some comment about the university later in the programme. But before we get into the planning matters, first of all I have to welcome you, Paul. Welcome to you, Richard.
Thank you.
Good to see you both here. Thanks for coming. Has anything specific caught your eye in the news this week? Paul?
Well, I'm a historian, so I don't really keep up on what's been going on over the last week. I think about things historically, and one of the things that, that I've noticed that's really coming to a bit of a crescendo at the moment is we're moving towards the centenary of the First World War.
Yeah.
And that's a very local issue that bubbles along under the surface as people prepare for 2014. And it's a thing I keep an eye on, the way in which the Tolson Museum has been responding to the centenary, the way in which other local organisations have been responding to the centenary. And it's the thing that I'm keeping my eye on from a local perspective over the next 4 years. So it's the thing that's always on my mind.
And Richard, anything caught your eye this week?
Well, just before we move on from that, we do a lot of work with Help for Heroes. We're the official people in the knitwear trade that are allied to Help for Heroes. And we've got something coming out next year for the 100th anniversary.
Excellent. Using
our product made in Slathwaite to raise money.
Excellent.
So that ties in pretty well.
I want to talk to you both about the Blackrock Mills site. Blackrock Mills is in Linthwaite. The developer has already got plans for 190 houses. It's caused a certain amount of concern with the local people because of the infrastructure. The roads are very narrow. The developer has come back with improved plans or increased plans for 236 homes, and he wants to build on the green fields between Upperclough and the mill site itself. He claims that he needs to do that to increase or to obtain the necessary levels of profitability. Richard, I'd like to ask you first, because I expect you know the area quite well. Do you think our narrow, winding country lanes can cope with this sort of housing development?
Well, I don't know how much traffic they have at the moment. You've always got a trade-off between somebody who's trying to develop a site and maximise the profit and the benefits to the local area. And someone has got to be able to say whether it's viable or not and whether it's wanted or not. If a developer is, and we know that property prices aren't what they were 5 years ago, but it's reasonably buoyant at the moment, especially for new builds. And to actually say that he needs to do almost 25% more to make it viable, I can't believe he got his sums that far wrong in the first place.
Can the council, without some sort of a framework like that, provide the necessary schools, the necessary public transport?
Well, I mean, clearly a planning framework is absolutely essential, but we have to think about what planning framework should do. I don't really think we should be building large numbers of new homes because we've got so many empty buildings around the town, and that if you refurbish empty buildings, then you don't need new schools. What you need to do is to increase the resources to existing schools. What that does is it instead of creating new groups of people who live in the same area, it actually strengthens communities as they exist. Now, in some ways that's not a really popular view because there's not a lot of money to be made on refurbishing existing housing stock. The money's to be made on finding a brownfield site, building large numbers of houses. But it doesn't necessarily serve local communities well. The problem for local authorities is they're just trying to create jobs and wealth. And that sometimes they let that get in the way of what I would say is pretty much common sense, that you look at what you've got and refurb.
Yeah, last week we did talk very briefly about the necessity to demolish buildings which have got beyond a state of repair where they can be financially viable, but we also discussed very briefly the necessity or the desirability of bringing people back into the town centres and converting the now underused buildings in town centres.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the one that I think is a really great tragedy is the co-op next to and above Wilkinson's, being empty
the Heaven and Hell Club.
Yes, which briefly had a nightclub in it. But you just look at that building and you think, why isn't it being used for something? Why isn't it possible to?
It's an excellent Art Deco building.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And of course, part of my desire to see these historic buildings improved and reused is because I think people in Huddersfield are proud of the history of the town.
Well, now you're taking me, you're absolutely right, you're taking me down a track here because I know that the university is expanding very rapidly, and all the build which the university is involved with is actually being done without going into loans from the bank, which is exceptionally good news, particularly in this day and age. Why doesn't the university buy some of these buildings and turn them into student blocks and stuff?
Well, I mean, of course, one of the things the university doesn't do is it doesn't build.
Speak on behalf of the whole university.
It doesn't build student residences, and lots of the building work is about building new student beds, and there's an awful lot of those being built at the moment. But the other thing about the university is that what it's tried to do is consolidate in what it would like to think of as a university quarter. And it builds within that quarter, but doesn't really go outside of it. And there's good reason for that, multi-site campuses are much more expensive to run. And one of the reasons we've got cash in the bank is because we run everything so efficiently that we can afford to not to take out loans.
This is way off my script, way off my script, but it's actually quite fascinating because I've really been wanting to ask somebody this for a long time. If you could wind back time, would you have gone for Storth's Hall?
It's a long way before even my time at the university. I've been there 13 years. Yeah. Personally, no. I think
it's a long way out.
I think Storth's Hall was probably a wrong decision, and the university. I've heard that once upon a time the university thought about moving the whole thing out of town. Clearly, it would have been a disaster in terms of student recruitment because so many of our students come from Leeds.
Disaster in terms of local trade.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think it's a good decision to have a town centre campus.
Okay, Black to Black Rock Mills, because that's really what I want to centre on. You know, Richard, that there is an overspill, a stream which comes all the way down through the site. You know that there's a holding tank right at the top. Is this a good place for a building site for new homes?
Well, it depends on the engineering work. You can divert anything, it's just the expense, and it's just a standard that it's done to.
Well, the only diversion you could do there is to put it into a tunnel.
Oh, correct. Yes, you'd have to put some infrastructure in.
Right, okay. Now, the next thing is Yorkshire Water have just given this application a rubber stamp of approval. We have no objections, which is fine as far as it goes. And yet, 4 miles up the valley in Marsden, they want to take away a historic, you won't like this, a historic monumental spillway, which is unique, because they are telling the local people that the Butterley spillway is no longer fit for purpose. And when they have to plan for the once in the 50,000 year flood. So if the Butterley spillway has to go in Marsden, is that once in the 50,000 year flood in Marsden going to be only in Marsden, or will it have an effect in Linthwaite as well? So if Butterley spillway goes, won't all the houses being built in Linthwaite go at the same time?
Well, possibly so. but the one in 50,000 is such that most people say, well, why are we doing it? But if it does occur, everybody wants to know why they haven't done something to sort it out beforehand.
Well, that's absolutely right. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Right, thanks for those comments. That was very interesting. Richard, before we go on to the other planning matter, we will now take a break. I'm David Ridgway. This is Kirklees TV's weekly wind-up. You can contact Kirklees Local TV on email at kirkleeslocaltv.com and on Twitter at kirkleeslocaltv. Welcome back. My name's David Ridgway. This is Kirklees TV's weekly wind-up. Just before the break, I was just going to move on to the other planning matter, Richard, which involved a mill in which your pension fund is deeply involved. And indeed, you are one of the trustees of that pension fund. Yeah. And of course, you can therefore talk as being the owner of that mill.
Yep. My
understanding is that there are plans to demolish the mill and build an Aldi convenience store.
That's correct, yes.
How beneficial to Slathwaite will this be?
Well, it's been highly contentious, as anybody who reads the Examiner will know, and there's been letters supporting both sides of the argument. What I know is that the people who work in our factory are all in favour of it, and under their own steam they got together a petition to say that they wanted the store, and they basically said to me, because these people work 6:30 till 6:30 shifts, 4 days a week, and they say it's the only store they can go to in the village after they finish the shift and shop. They also say that it'll improve their standard of living because the goods are competitively priced there. Now, the developer that's doing it, we had a lot of talk about this at the beginning, and he said that wherever he's done Aldi's before, it actually increases the income to the majority of the shops that are around it and doesn't actually detract from it.
Okay. Can I ask, do you know why the application, when it was heard in November, was deferred until this, actually it was heard in October and deferred to November, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
What was the reason for that?
Well, there are competitive schemes, and they are not at the same level of planning preparation and application. And there's been a lot of pressure being put on by various people to try and get the two schemes together. And
but surely that's a sensible thing to do.
Well, it is and it isn't, because I don't see why the other scheme, which it's been talked about long before the Aldi, couldn't have been at the same stage.
Okay. The other scheme, to explain, is in the Globe Mill. Globe Mill's been empty now for 10 years. And it's very large, and consequently it carries with it considerably different difficulties in order for development and refurbishment. I think that would be a fair comment to that.
Oh yeah.
Has much information been done to gather support from the other shopkeepers in Slathwaite, or indeed to find out what their thoughts are?
Yes, but this is also a very contentious issue, because both sides of the argument are claiming that the majority of the shopkeepers support their argument, and,
well,
and that by
How
definition
political?
can't be true.
No, indeed not. Indeed not. I mean, 50% plus 50% is not 150%, is it?
Correct.
No, indeed. I understand that. Well, I was present at that planning meeting, and I have to say that I was rather surprised that the voting split on specific political lines. Do you think that such important decisions as this should be made at the whim of blinkered politicians?
No. What I found fascinating was that we sit in an amphitheatre, and there are two walkways, and on the right-hand side are the experts that are employed by the council, such as highways and planning. In the middle you've got the politicians, the members of the council, and on the left-hand side you've got the general public, people like myself who've come to have the say. And what became absolutely obvious is that all the experts employed by the council said that it's absolutely fine, and they're quite happy for this scheme to go ahead. And then it goes to the people in the middle, and suddenly it becomes political. It's not whether it's right or wrong, it's often whether is it going to affect the votes when it comes up for their re-election. And you could see this undertone going through a lot of the discussions, and you could see people getting quite nervous as members of the public spoke and said about how many people in certain areas supported this or supported that. And I think that it's very dangerous because they were talking about deferring it or voting it down, when actually all the experts had said they agreed with it and they were quite happy for it to go ahead. Well, and that's quite a dangerous situation.
Indeed. On the basis of that then, do you think that the voting should be secret?
Well then fiddling about with democracy, and I
Well,
can see both sides of the argument, but to be honest, it wouldn't bother me if it was in secret.
We'd need to know what that would do to accountability, because like, in some ways, of course, the fact that politicians are responding to voters, to the electorate, is how democracy works. I think the problem is that we mistrust politicians quite a lot now. So we presume,
glad to hear that.
Yeah, that we presume their motives for acting in particular ways are because of cynical motives. Now, I don't know the ins and outs of the party division on this. But what I do know is that people have got very suspicious about the way in which parties operate and wonder about what's in it for them in a variety of ways. Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, but we've got to be careful that a pressure group that's actually a minority doesn't exert a bigger influence than it should do, because they're better organised.
Absolutely.
And that's where the problem for the politician comes when they're in public, is to, are you going to do what's right, or do you want to be seen to be not upsetting anybody because a voting time is going to come up?
Mm.
Well, as the only politician in this particular discussion, I can tell you that I have spent my whole life in politics upsetting people, and I actually find that quite invigorating, really. But I mean, I've upset you once or twice, Richard, but there we go. And you're
not alone.
But yeah, no, indeed, and you're still here,
Yep.
and we can still talk about
Yep.
it, and that's the important thing. So if we don't trust the politicians, and I have to say that there's every reason why you should say that, how should such decisions be made? Can the public, can public opinion be protected unless the system we have at the moment is sustained?
It's the trade-off you have in a democracy, and you've got to say, whilst it's not perfect, it's probably better than the alternative. Yeah, and I also think that if people have been able to fight for their cause and do their best, they feel a lot better than if they're not able to fight for the cause. And at the first meeting, we had the situation where they said how many people are wanting to speak, and it was about 35 people in total. And there was a large groan from the politicians, and the chairman tried to cut it down to 3 from each side. And Jason McCartney stood up and said, this is not democratic. So we ended up with everybody speaking.
Right, that was very interesting. Thank you very much. You'll be very pleased that it's gone through.
I am, yes. I'm relieved. I'm relieved something's happening to the site, because it's very dangerous.
Just to explain though, Richard, you have to understand that the decision has not yet been made for the planning application to go forward. All that planning committee decision is to allow the officers to make the final decisions. Did you know that?
Oh, so it's basically an agreement to agree.
Absolutely right.
Right, okay.
It's like those famous discussions we had during the Cold War, where we were discussing who would sit on which side of which table and whether the tables would be square or round.
Okay.
Right, we're now going to take a break. Thank you very much for that. It was most interesting. My name is David Ridgway. This is Kirklees TV's weekly wind-up. Kirklees TV can always be contacted by email on kirkleeslocaltv.com and on Twitter at kirkleeslocaltv. Welcome back. My name's David Ridgway. This is Kirklees TV's weekly wind-up. Before we close, I've got 4 quick items. These need to be quick because we take a lot of time on planning stuff. Did you read, Paul, did you read about Huddersfield University being voted the best university in the country?
Absolutely. We heard last week there was an Oscar-type award ceremony in London, and the Times Higher Education voted us the best university in the UK for 2013. It's absolutely brilliant news. It really shows just how far the university has travelled in the last 5 or so years.
Well, I have to say that I am a fan. Before I became the mayor last year, I was pretty indifferent. But having been in and out and seen this and done that, been introduced to these people and so on, and I stopped Bob Cryan in Market Square about 6 to 8 weeks ago, and I said to him that I'd been indifferent before I became the mayor. But now I am the #1 fan of the university. I think that guy is absolutely incredible, what he has done. But there you are. What a guy. And there's a lot of speculation that the new Innovation Centre needs additional space, and that might be going to Globe Mill in Slathwaite. Any thoughts on that, Richard?
I hope it does.
Good. I hope it does.
I hope there's plenty of car parking, but I hope it does.
I tell you what, that will really affect the traffic movements, won't it? I wonder where we'll go with that one. And there are reports that the university staff are going to strike again.
I was on strike yesterday.
Really?
Yeah.
What are you striking for?
Because we've had pay cuts for the last 5 years, 13% pay cut since 2008.
Right. Okay.
So we're on strike against a 1% pay offer. Now that might sound, it contradicts my support for Bob Cryan and the university, but if you want a good university, you need to pay the staff appropriately.
If you want to have a good business, you have to pay your staff appropriately, but you've also got to employ the appropriate staff to have a good business.
Well, absolutely. We're employing the appropriate staff. We've got extremely high quality
you're here
staff.
today. Absolutely right. Yeah. Are you a special case?
At the university?
No, not you, but the staff at the university. Are they a special case for strikes? I mean, there's a lot of people suffering out there at the moment.
But a strike isn't just for our sector. It's actually about all the people who work in the universities, and actually it's very low-paid people like cleaners and so on.
Indeed.
And I think while the strike's mainly about pay, it's also an attack on the government for the way in which they've mishandled higher education, tripling fees, and students aren't particularly seeing the benefit of those tripling fees.
Okay.
In universities are poorly run. At Huddersfield they are.
Hey, I didn't realise you were a shop steward, Paul. leave it at that.
I was on the picket line yesterday.
Okay, good. Well, good for you. I've been on a picket line before now. Secondly, did you hear about the anthrax scare? Did you hear about the anthrax scare?
Yes, where somebody threw something and said it was anthrax at this...
anthrax doesn't look like that. No, it's not a powder.
No.
But the emergency services, really good. They got in there. I mean, anthrax, if it was anthrax, we would all now be dead.
Yeah.
And so would the rest of the country. Okay, the emergency services got there pretty sharpish, but, two stories about the emergency services. Did you read of the lady rugby player, second row forward, playing at Staincliffe Fields in Dewsbury, some 200 yards away from Dewsbury Hospital, was injured? They called an ambulance. The ambulance station is in the hospital. It took them 90 minutes to get there. Is that acceptable?
No.
No, absolutely not. In some ways it feeds back into why we were striking yesterday. We have seen cuts across public services that mean that you get these ridiculous situations where people are suffering. What's wrong with pump priming the economy by having more ambulance drivers? Or paramedics?
I don't disagree with that at all. There are wider implications, and it's not for me to say. But I don't really want to knock the emergency services, because in Glasgow they have been absolutely superb all the way down the track, and good luck to them too. And I do take your point, Paul. All these things have got to be interknit together. Lastly, we have, and I've been asked to have one of these every week, and we now have a kitten stuck up a tree story. Yes, folks, down in Lower Houses, a kitten has been stuck up a tree for 2 days. The fire service couldn't get close enough because the ground was too soft. But thanks to a local climber, Greg Tolson, he shinned up the tree and rescued the cat. But don't you think the cat might have come down on its own accord when it got a bit hungry?
Yeah, and how long did it take the emergency services to respond?
Probably not 14 hours. Thank you both very much for coming on. Paul, been great to see you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Richard,
David.
nice to see you again. I'm David Ridgway. This is Kirklees Local TV's weekly wind-up. Please let us know whether you think it's right for the university staff to strike. Paul says yes. Others might have another idea. I'm neutral. I'm a liberal. Do you think our planning processes are up to scratch? Richard might not think so. I might have a different idea, but I can't tell you because I'm a neutral, I'm a liberal. And will you go shopping in Aldi in Slathwaite? I will. Goodbye, thanks for watching, see you next week.